morning. Take your seat. I had a lot of ground to cover this morning. I'm going to talk about something this morning, and this is a one-off. But I'm going to talk about something that is current, but not really heard it talked about from the pulpit. Yeah. So I had to, do notes. All right? Because I want to stay on task. And I'm liable to drift when I drive. Let me just say what I'm talking about today. I'm going to talk about toxic relationships, but one specific element of relationships, gaslighting. I'll define it for those of you who are like, gaslighting. What's that? Turn my mic on. I thought it was on. Okay. Oh, the other mic. Got it. All right. So we're going to see where this is going. Gaslighting. Thank you, Jay. That's why I love you. I'm going to talk about gaslighting because, honestly, it's the number one issue in my office when couples come to see me. They don't know it. I know it. You would be shocked at some of the stuff I listen to. You'd even be more shocked if you heard how my head was processing. Like, wow, that's game at a whole nother level. Now, I'm saying this, and I'm not even necessarily identifying intentionality, because a lot of gaslighting occurs just because it works. Where the person's not like looking at you saying, here's my gaslighting strategy for you. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about it from the perspective of, I am so narcissistic and so determined to have what I want with the least amount of hassle that you are basically an accessory here. And you just really need to know your role and shut up, to quote a certain wrestler. I never know what people have copyrighted, so I got to be careful. So I'm going to give you some, as is normally what I do. This is the integration of the biblical and the sociological, psychological, because gaslighting is really a sociological, psychological term. But I want to see if I can draw it up from Scripture so you see that it is in there too. So where to start? 2 Timothy. Yeah. And I'm going to admit some of this is freestyle. Because I was going to do Q&A. And nah, not this morning. So we've really gone over this passage a lot, but I want to approach it from another angle this morning and add some other stuff to it. And I want to set you up to begin to see that you're being gaslit. The entire election is a study in gaslighting. This is not even a political statement. Yeah, let me put the scripture in. I'll circle back around. I'll give you a quick definition, and then I'll get into some detail. Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation that causes individuals to doubt their interpretive ability, memory, or sanity. In other words, in a relationship, and there are only 3 types of relationships from a structural standpoint: partnerships, predatorial relationships, and parasitic. And why do I say that? Because in nature, everything that relates to something else in nature has one of these 3 relationships. They are either described by science as being parasitic, meaning there is a parasite and a host, and the parasite is getting more out of the relationship than the host, hence the host is hosting the parasite. That's one form of relationship. The other is predatorial, and in a predatorial relationship, you are dealing with voice and choice. And what I mean by that is the predator wants to limit your voice and choice because the predator does not want to be surprised or seen. You didn't hear what I just said. Predators don't want to be surprised or seen. And what I mean by seen is predatory relationships are dominated by somebody who carries a boatload of shame. And so the predator develops this persona to guide the reality of who they are. And in order to keep you from, well, I'll just give you an example you'll understand. Wizard of Oz. The wizard was a predator. Didn't want you to sing. Because he didn't want you to understand who and what he really was. Okay? So you get all the names and stuff like that. Don't be caught up by the witches. Don't let the witches, yeah. All right, I'm getting there. So there are these 3 types of relationships, and gaslighting occurs in predatorial and parasitic relationships. It really doesn't occur as deeply in partnership, which is the 3rd one. The partnership is where we're gaining mutual benefit. I could go into all the commons. I think I'm up to 7 now. Common goals for the common good, commonly defined. Any of you remember any of this? Yeah, commonly executed, consistently, through change and conflict, for common goals, common good. Okay? So that's a partnership, or that's the essence of it. Our family. Oh, that's good to know. Man. All right, so let's look at 2 Timothy through this lens. 2 Timothy, the 3rd chapter, 1-7. Understand this. In the last days, there will come times of difficulty. It's defining now. For people will be lovers of themselves. In other words, they'll be narcissists. The one thing you are going to find in a gaslit, structured relationship, it has to have a narcissist. And we're just now talking different pathological levels of narcissism. Because at a point, you can have a homicidal pathological sociopathic narcissist. So that's at the other extreme end. Shame-driven is at the other end of that. Okay? A true sociopath doesn't have shame. They're shameless. So, at one end, shameless at the other end. You still tracking with me? All right. So, let's take a look. Continue. They will be lovers of themselves. Now, everything after this, I can just summarize, is an expression of toxic self-love. Lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to parents, ungrateful. In other words, they don't understand relational structure because I'm a narcissist and it's about me, so I don't know what this honor thing is because it's about me. How could I honor somebody else? Ungrateful because it's about me. Why would I be grateful? You are merely doing the minimum in serving me. Unholy, heartless, unappeasable, in other words, so narcissistic, so empty, you can't fill the hole, so you really can't appease me. Slanderous, without self-control, I want what I want when I want it, not loving because I'm a narcissist, and I can't be loving because all my love is taken up on me. Is everybody? Treacherous, reckless, swollen. I'd have to consider you to consider the impact on you of my behavior. And since I don't consider you the impact of my behavior, I don't even look at it and measure it because I'm really not considering you. Is anybody still tracking? All right. Now, I want you to see where the gaslighting kicks in. Swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. And again, he starts with narcissism and he ends with narcissism. And the ultimate expression of it is, I love myself so much that there's no room left for God. Because I already have one. It's me. Having an appearance of godliness, but denying its power, what does it say? Avoid such people. Most of us don't listen. For among them are those who creep into houses, our households, and capture what? Weak women, burdened with sins, led astray by various passions. In what state of awareness? Always learning, never able to come to the knowledge of truth. This is the ultimate result of somebody, when I'm counseling them, that is in a state of being gaslit. They keep going through the lessons and they don't get it. And the reason why they don't get it isn't just that I'm ignorant. I need you to hear this. It's I've had these burdens placed on me at such a level I can't think straight. Anybody seeing that? Burdened with sins, led astray by various passions. So I got all this stuff going on. So do you see the picture of the person who is vulnerable because they got all this unresolved stuff going on? Now, here's the key. You get with a gaslighter and they'll make sure that you never get clarity. They're going to make sure all of your issues stay your issues. And they're collecting data when you first start dating, as you're sharing your story. Your story is being weaponized because I'm recognizing all of your weaknesses and I'm storing them up. And I know where you're vulnerable with your daddy issues and your abandonment issues and your insecurity and your jealousy and your overthinking and that last relationship, which I'm nothing like, even though you've had 10 of the same in a row. I'm 11 and I'm different from all the other ones. Though every dynamic in the relationship looks exactly like the one that you've come out of. Are you tracking now? All right. So what he's describing essentially is gaslighting. And again, it's the manipulation of reality to non-reality. Borrow from another story. It is essentially you going down the rabbit hole. When you meet a gaslighter, you're headed down the rabbit hole with them. And they will be warping your reality. Clocks will run backwards. And then they'll look at you like you crazy. You still? Okay. All right, so the gaslighter targets the vulnerable individual. That's kind of what they do. You will not see somebody self-aware being gaslit. Okay? You will not see somebody who has a strong social support system activated being gaslit. Activated is the key word because the gaslighter's plan is, if you have that, is to deactivate it, hence the need for the rabbit hole. Because we can't do stuff up here. We got to do it down in the rabbit hole where things are different. And I'm going to give you two different rabbit holes since I'm here. There are two types of rabbit holes that people get sucked in by gaslighters. One is the rabbit hole of isolation, and that's usually ran by a sole abuser. And the abuser in that rabbit hole issues day passes. No one is a permanent citizen. He'll put his mama out. He'll put his mama out the rabbit hole if she's not supporting his game. So everybody is issued a day pass. Now, the primary target of the gaslighter is trying to get permanent citizenship, but doesn't know. Here we only issue day passes. Okay? So isolation. The other rabbit hole is the rabbit hole of assimilation. Not to get too gender specific, but the isolation is usually female dominant. And that rabbit hole has you giving up your identity for fusion with everybody else. You cannot be different. You cannot be different in this rabbit hole. In this rabbit hole, you got to be like everybody else. Is anybody, are you still tracking? All right. So the person who gets caught up in this dynamic is always in a state of ever learning. Because you can never come to the truth because the rules change depending on the circumstances. You'll never come to the knowledge of truth. You still with me? And it's always going to be about exploiting your vulnerabilities. Psychological impact of this manipulation is over time you will feel senseless and powerless. You will be in the relationship totally dependent on the gaslighter to give a clue and to tell you what's going on. And over time, you will stop trusting your own self. So you will be having conversations with yourself. You'll speak the truth, and then you'll turn around and unravel it. Maybe something is wrong with me. And you'll second guess yourself. When the gaslighter is successful, the gaslighter no longer needs to gaslight. The gaslighter can then do gaslighting with a look. Because you're chipped at this point. And your mind just goes there. So they'll just give you a dismissive look like, here you go again. And you'll recoil. And you'll pull back. Because you don't want to be out there to test truth. They look like a fool so much, you now don't want to come out and look like a fool, so you recoil. Well, maybe I didn't see you. Maybe it wasn't you. Maybe it was. Proverbs chapter 26 kind of paints a biblical picture of gaslight. You guys were not prepared for this, were you? Yeah, I know. All right, so here we go. Proverbs 6:24 reads, whoever hates disguises himself with his lips and harbors deceit in his heart. When he speaks great, leave him. There are abominations in. Though his hatred be covered with deception, his wickedness will be exposed in what? In the assembly. I want you to get the picture here of what's being said. This is describing how gaslighters operate. Gaslighters do not want you in the assembly. They want you in isolation. Does everybody understand that? They want you in isolation. The reason why they want you in isolation because they want to dictate the terms of truth. And they want to determine what your reality is. And what's the purpose of that? I've already said it. To get you to do the work that they don't want to do. They wouldn't deal with a whole human. Gaslighters don't want to deal with your autonomy. They won't deal with your opinion. They won't deal with your perspective. So the gaslighting is a workaround. And ultimately, the goal is to get you to become dependent on them so they can depend on you. I'm going to say that again. Ultimately, the goal is to get you to be dependent on them so they then can depend on you. I'll give you an example. We'll just go political here for a minute. Okay. Don't care who or what you're voting for, but one of the people running is a gaslighter par excellence. Not even going to say who it is. I won't look at them, I'll look at the people. There is nothing you can say to them where they will use their reasoning because they've already formed their opinion. And their opinion is predicated on what their leader has told them. And you're not changing that. Because they branded it on hats. Watch this. And they wear the hat as a sign of identity. And the reason why they wear the hat as a sign of identity is because they don't have one outside of that. So for them, dialogue is an existential threat. Understand what I mean when I say existential threat, because you need to understand it. An existential threat means I'll die if I have to change. I will cease to be me. So I'm not talking about reasonable policies or unreasonable policies. I'm talking about identity and dependence. And there is a certain faction of that group who draw their identity from it. It's not about politics. We're way past politics. We're into Jim Jones. Remember what I said, extremes. And again, I'm not, now, if you're here and that is where you reside, you heard an attack, you didn't hear an assessment. And I'm not changing that. I think we've actually thinned the herd because most of them have left. Because I attacked their leader. Didn't leave when I said Obama has done nothing. Didn't leave when I said Bush might have committed the greatest evil ever. Didn't leave when I said Clinton should have never been a leader, abusing women. Didn't leave. Didn't leave. Didn't even question it. But left because I got political. The first time I started talking about fear. I don't care who you vote for. Jesus is on the throne. I don't care who's in the White House. Let me just say that. Now, you want to talk about absolute support? You ain't changing my mind? Yeah, that's mine right there. Jesus. So, just so clear. Yeah, I've been gaslit by Scripture. So, yeah. Yeah, that's me. So I want to explain to you the different levels of gaslighting. You ready? All right. So there are two levels of gaslighting according to research. First order gaslighting and second order gaslighting. All right? Again, back to politics. Until recently, politics was really in first order gaslighting, the gaslighter and the victim agree on concepts, differ on the application. We want safe cities. Then we have to really go to war against crime. Because we want safe cities and we have to go to war against crime. Well, we want safe cities, then we need to support social programs. And we really need to invest in our communities. What do we agree on? We want the same. We want safe cities. So we agree. Where we disagree is in the application. Now, here's the beauty of that. We can reach compromise because we want the same thing. And actually, the best thing is if we do find some compromise. Because we agree, we can still negotiate. So, yeah, you have some ads, and I'm going to look at them, and I'm going to say, now, come on now. It ain't that bad. Crime, ain't nobody dying in the street like you say they dying every day in the street. People aren't starving like you say they starve. Does everybody see that? But there's gaslighting because you're going to see the commercials. The commercials going to have you thinking crime everywhere. People starving everywhere. Need. And both sides are going to present their argument, but we are after basically the same thing. That's first order gaslighting. Now, first order gaslighting usually works through the promotion of cultural stereotypes. And that's what you used to see in the political thing, is that you'd see cultural stereotypes. I'll give you an example. A woman is upset because she feels like man's not doing enough work around the house. I'm doing all the work around the house. So in the relationship, she complains, you're not helping with the domestic stuff. Gaslighting 101. But babe, it's pretty clear that you're better at it. I mean, women are just wired for this stuff. This stuff you care about. I don't care about how clean the dishes are. I just don't want to catch nothing when I eat. You're the one that wants the house done, cleaned, and is anybody? Are you? Didn't prepare for me to come that practical, huh? Women are just naturally wired for domestic stuff. They're better at it. They're better with the children. Babe, you handle it. I always get flustered when I talk to them. It's gaslighting. Okay? So that's how I get out of doing equal chores. I'm not good at it, and I ain't trying to practice to get better. You iron the shirt so much better than me. Well, Lord, won't he do it? For the sake of balance, a man expresses his feelings or sadness from the stress of his work. Wife responds, why are you complaining about stress? Men are supposed to be tough. You're supposed to be the rational one. Why are you getting so emotional? They talk about women being emotional. Here you are about to fall apart. Maybe you're just not cut out for that kind of job. Maybe you're not tough enough. But notice what I'm capitalizing on. Both of those scenarios. I'm capitalizing on how the culture has built into it stereotypes. So when you see some of the political commercials, they will all go after a stereotype. That's first level gaslighting. By the way, we are in second level. I'm probably thinking we need third level of gaslighting. But this is how it used to be. So you could imply something and the cultural norm supported it. Willie Horton ad. Some of you remember that. You could apply something. Put a certain color face to an issue. So it's a war on drugs in certain neighborhoods. Specific. Now that we have addictions in other neighborhoods, it's a sickness that we must address. Is anybody seeing how this works? It's a sickness now. We've got to not deal with the user. We got to get the user's treatment. Anybody seen any of this? This is gaslighting. Second order gaslighting. It's going to be a little more complicated. So I'm just pairing you. Second order gaslighting occurs when there is a fundamental disagreement on which concept should be used to interpret the situation. In other words, second order gaslighting takes place at the point of determining whose reality are we going with. First order, we have a shared reality. We actually have shared facts. Now, I'm going to manipulate them to my advantage. You probably manipulate them to your advantage. That's what we're doing. Because we're both. Second order, we've moved into the realm of pathology. Now, this form of gaslighting leads to deeper self-doubt as the victims begin to question their own framework and their ability to understand situations correctly. One of the most telling conversations I had with somebody, we were dialoguing, trying not to give too much away. How do I say this? We were dialoguing about an issue, and I shared from a perspective. And I shared my perspective from okay, hold on. Stand up. All right. What's going on? Mic's not working? We good? I'm going to just say the devil is a lie. He don't want this. I'm telling you. He don't want this. And by the way, he is a gaslighter. Genesis, you will not surely die. Not surely. You really trust what God said to you? Can you really trust a God who's got an agenda? Anybody seeing any of this? So, in case you're thinking, man, he's so far away from Scripture. If you're going to deal in spirituality, you had better know about gaslighting. All right, so second level denies you access to reality. In other words, you don't get to contribute to the framework of reality. I will establish the framework, you will live in that reality, and you will respond and react to that reality. But you don't get to contribute. You're not an expert in reality like I am. Okay? So, this is second order gaslighting. In it, research described this, and I was fascinated when I saw the actual term that they used, because it's a term researchers never use, so I found it diagnostic that they used it. They call it 3 distinct wrongs. 3 distinct wrongs in gaslighting. In other words, researchers don't use the term wrong. They used it. And they say gaslighters use 3 distinct wrongs. That's what I'm giving you. You ready? Ready? Okay. Everybody ready? Number one, meta-linguistic deprivation. Well, they had to go, come on. I'm going to explain it, you know that. Meta-linguistic deprivation. I love just the wordplay of that, Meta-linguistic. We're not dealing at the micro, we're dealing at the meta level. Meta-linguistics. Meta-linguistics would be not just rhetoric, but the entire linguistic picture, okay? In other words, we don't get to argue over what words mean because I'm controlling the whole language. I own the language. I own the concepts. That's metalinguistic. So a metalinguistic deprivation means I limit you to responding to my words and my perception and my language. Metalinguistic deprivation involves limiting or denying someone the language or means to express their thoughts, feelings, or experiences. In other words, I am denying you language to have a perspective. You don't have a narrative. You want an example? I'm going to give you a couple, but I'll start with one that I was having a discussion with somebody, and when I called it out, the look on their face was like I was speaking a foreign language. And it was somebody who was trying to defend, the Union flag, the Confederacy, the Confederate flag, and they were saying, this is just my heritage, I'm honoring my heritage. Let's say that's true. Then fly it over your house, not the Capitol, that we all share. That we all share. Because they were even conceding that, well, you may see it different, but for me, this is just me honoring my background and my heritage. Yes, in a setting like I don't have one that's supposed to be public and shared. So if you're going to put that flag over the state capitol, then you're really only honoring one. Now, what's the purpose of saying I'm only honoring my heritage? It's because if I say that, you are denied expression and the language to voice your heritage because I'm honoring my heritage, as if my honoring of my heritage is the only issue. And you're denying me a chance to honor my heritage. Is anybody seeing this? That's meta-linguistic deprivation. And what happens is, or the impact of it is, the victim, loses their ability to advocate for their perspective or to validate their experiences using a shared language. Because when I say mine, we're now not using shared language, we're using your language, and you've couched it in a way where it's just simply you honoring your heritage. Well, now I have to deal with and only address your ability to honor your heritage because you've limited the language. Does everybody understand that? It prevents us from having the discussion with how can you fly a flag under another flag that flag tried to eliminate. That the notion of the two of them side by side. One of them, but you can't have that because When I say I'm honoring my heritage and legacy and my forefathers, now I'm coming after your heritage. Is anybody seeing? And what winds up happening is you get denied the language to express your perspective. I'll give you some more practical examples. Here's one. A woman tries to articulate her feelings about a situation where she felt disrespected by her partner in public. Okay. I didn't appreciate you, calling me out like that. Here's the response. You ready? Why are you always so emotional? We don't need to talk about everything. Man, you take every little thing. I was just joking. I'm just talking. It's in the flow of conversation. And you pick that one thing out of the thousands of things I said in that whole conversation. Is anybody seeing any of that? And you let that one little thing bother you. Your whole mood changed. We didn't have a good time because your whole attitude changed. Just let it go. Why can't we just have fun? What am I doing? Yeah, I've labeled your language as emotional. Now, if it's emotional, I don't have to consider it as rational. Because if it's rational, I have to think about it. If it's emotional, then it's just your feelings. And I can now say you're just being emotional. Now, the only people who kill out of rational thought are sociopaths. The people who kill, the other people are the rest of us. We kill out of emotion. Meaning, emotion has always been a stronger motivator and a more central issue to people's lives than thinking. But you're just being emotional. Emotional is why you cut me off and I stopped the car, got out the car, and walked up to your window, not knowing what you got in there. That's emotional. Jail is full of more emotional than rational. People aren't paying money for drugs for rational. Multi-billion-dollar industry. You're not going to the theater for the rationale of the narrative. In fact, most of the story doesn't make sense, and it can't make sense because I only got 90 minutes. And I can't make it all make sense in 90 minutes, so I got to put some stuff in here, and you will have to suspend your rationale for the next 2 hours. But I'm just being emotional. Well, if I'm just being emotional, I'm now robbing you of any language to have a rational conversation about how you treat me. Anybody seen? Man tries to express his concerns about feeling neglected because the wife is putting all this energy into other people, the children, and other things. Response: you're just being insecure. As a man, shouldn't you be independent and not so needy? You'd be surprised. You think this is a hypothetical. this ain't a hypothetical. This is a conversation I'm having with a lot of men who won't bring it up because they don't want to be labeled as needy, because they've already had that leaked in a press release. That if you bring this up, we going for the needy thing. And as a man, you can't be out here needy. Yeah. Ooh, I'm already out of time. All right. Just keep going. Are you in for it? Are you down? Yeah. All right. Paul, they said keep going, so at any time you can cut off the feed whenever you want. This is the advantage of coming and getting it live. Because sometimes you just got to pop out. See? All right. Here's the second one. Conceptual. Oh, I'm struggling on pronouncing this. Obscuration. It's a word they invented. Yeah. Conceptual obscuration. Conceptual obscuration involves deliberately making concepts or situations unclear or confusing. Repeat it? All right. Excuse me. Conceptual obscuration. You just want to hear me say that again. Involves deliberately making concepts or situations unclear or confusing to manipulate someone's understanding or perception. So I make it obscure. I make it all deep when it isn't. So the impact on this is that the victim adopts an erroneous understanding of the situation, which obscures reality of their experience and impairs their judgment. And so you're living in this self-doubt, distorted perception of reality. Example? Yes? No? Oh, okay. Just ask. Wife questions her husband about the finances, notices unusual expenditures. You ready for the response? Okay. So money's being shifted around in the retirement. Okay. In the retirement, money's being shifted around. Okay. Is that? Oh, I got you, Tyra. Tyra's paying more attention now. Here's the response. Oh, you wouldn't understand all the financial details. It's really complicated, and there's a lot of factors involved. Trust me, I've got it under control. And are you checking on me? You checking up on me? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm checking on us. I ain't checking on you. I'm checking on us, because the impact is going to be us. So this, you don't understand how the financial system works. Sometimes you got to move money around to get the golf clubs you really want. Now that part we ain't saying. But you wouldn't understand. All right? So that's conceptual. So I take finances, which is simple. I looked at it and saw it's less. We were doing simple math a minute ago. And now we're into financial computations. How do we get there? Here's another one. And if you notice, I balanced this out, so it's not just gender weighted. That was intentional. So a man asked his wife, Babe, you seem a little distant, a little uncommunicative lately. Like, what's going on? Her response, it's just a lot of things you wouldn't really understand or get. It's complicated with emotions and relationship stuff. It's not something you need to worry about. It's woman stuff. So I'm sitting over here, you looking at me crazy and ain't saying nothing. And this is woman stuff. When do we get to the men stuff? So are you seeing how I took the notion and concept and I made it complicated and muddy? So we can't talk about, I'm really thinking about the guy at work and how much more attention he pays to me. I just got a lot on my mind right now because I ain't in this affair yet. And I'm working through getting rid of the guilt. When we sitting up at lunch, laughing and intimate. Anybody seen that? So I threw a concept out, and what am I denying you of? I'm denying you of a framework for us to have this conversation and to have this dialogue and to work through these issues. So when the divorce comes, you never saw it coming. And you didn't even get a chance to address none of the issues. Anybody? All right, number 3. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want a number 3? Oh, okay. Again, we into overtime. I got 3. Three tiers. Now, by the way, this is just the intro. I ain't gonna have time for the outro. Although I may get to the end, run it back again. I may do it 6 times. All right, here's the other one. Number 3 is perspective subversion. This is pretty straightforward. Perspective subversion. Perspective subversion involves undermining or altering someone's point of view to make them doubt their own perspective or to adopt a different one. Here are examples of how. Okay. Well, don't be sorry. Perspective subversion involves undermining or altering someone's point of view to make them doubt their own perspective or adopt a different perspective. Got it? Okay. One more whole thing again? I don't know what that part is. The last 5 words. Now I'm counting. You have no idea how hard this is. Now you're going to introduce math. Or adopt a different one. Okay. Now, the impact. The victim's ability to independently assess or understand their experience is compromised. Over time, they will begin to rely on the gaslighter to hand them a perspective because they cease to choose their own perspective. So rather than have a perspective, I'll just come to you and get the perspective for both of us. So that's perspective subversion. Yeah, I'll leave that alone. You ready? Here's an example. man towards a woman. A woman feels upset because her husband often makes decisions without consulting her. You ready? Babe, I don't share with you because of your tendency to overthink stuff. You're always stressed about small decisions. Honestly, I thought you'd appreciate me handling things for you so you don't have to worry. You should be grateful you don't have to deal with all these decisions. See? So what's the perspective I want you to shift to? You should be thankful I'm doing all this mental work for you. And I'm taking the pressure off of you because I'm deciding what type of golf clubs we should have. So I'm making all, the decisions just so you can be free to do your woman stuff. Which obviously ain't, yeah. All right, woman towards the man. A man expresses concern that his partner frequently dismisses his opinions during conversation. So like he'll express something, she'll dismiss it, okay? So let me see if I can be more concrete than that. Give me a minute. All right, so they're talking about disciplining the kids. And he expresses that I'm not trying to raise a punk. They gotta have some discipline. They gotta have some boundaries. They gotta have some. And she dismisses that, okay? And he expresses, I feel like you're dismissing what I'm saying. You're just being sensitive. I value your opinion, but sometimes you're just not practical. Maybe you should try to be more realistic and less emotional about these things. Yeah, women will flip that thing. Because perspective shifting. I thought I had a rational assessment of the situation. You're telling me I'm just responding out of emotion? So what winds up happening? The woman subverts his perspective by suggesting that his opinions are impractical and not workable. So in the raising of these kids, your stuff is theory. I'm the one really having to deal with the day-to-day, and that don't work for me. So I'll let our son have the iPad for extended periods of time because you don't understand how stressed I am. And so sometimes I give him the iPad and just to get a break. A whole lot of breaks being taken. Now he craves the iPad. Can't understand why he can't have the iPad. Anybody hearing any of this? Any of this sounding familiar? It's not practical. Why? Because sometimes I need to be doing stuff, so I give them the iPad. Thought we agreed we wouldn't get our kids hooked on electronics. Or bought them a phone. Thought we agreed they'd have to be here to get a phone. Well, that's just not practical because sometimes I need. Anybody? Oh, you got quiet. on that. So those are the three levels of gaslighting. I didn't do too bad. I'm 6 minutes into overtime of the introduction. So I guess when I'm back, I will dive into, now I'll just give you something to look forward to at some point. Proverbs chapter 4 has the answer to gaslighting. Yeah. So when we get back around to this, Proverbs chapter 4 has the answer to gaslighting, which is where I'll take you. Unless you want to read it on your own and, kind of have God talk to you about some stuff. All right? That's kind of all I have. Any brief questions before I turn it over to the announcement? And I'm only asking that because you all look shell-shocked. Oh, yeah, well, good. Process. You have plenty of time. All right. Announcements.